to the Fantasy Football Fanatics podcast with your hosts Griffin Palmer, CJ Hickman, Jason Cabrera, and Ryan Mitchell.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to the show. It is Friday, September 29th. This is the Fantasy Football Fanatics podcast, the official podcast of the fantasyfootballfanatics.com. I am your host, creator, founder, and everything, really. Griffin Palmer, joined by absolutely nobody. Today it is a one-man show, and that is completely fine. More than happy to fill in and do the work. I mean, hey, we wanted to do this show for you guys. We were going to record it early so we could get everyone on board, but we didn't want to miss out on any big notes. And for that exact reasoning, we're glad that we didn't, because some news broke on Thursday. So, we'll get to all of that, the top headlines. The guys will be back on Monday. CJ will have his Periscope on Sunday. So, see everybody's faces soon. Don't worry. We're all okay. We're good. Just, life happens. Anyway, I have an amazing show for you guys today. Today, we're going to be talking about our starts and sits for week number 4. Of course, all the top headlines from around the league. Lots to get to today. We're going to power right through. As always, please make sure you guys subscribe to the show. We are a year-round podcast. If you guys are not subscribed, if you start fading off, that's you're missing an opportunity there. Not just me pushing the show, but if you're not up on the news, the waiver wire targets, the ad drops, the starts and sits, you're going to be doing yourself a disservice throughout the season. This is how you win your championships. You have to stay through the course, not just leading up to the season, but through the season itself. You can find us basically anywhere, wherever you're listening right now or watching, iTunes, Stitcher, Podcast Addict, YouTube, various other streaming apps. Of course, you can also submit your questions and follow the show on Twitter at the FF Fanatics. By far and away the easiest way to interact with the show, get breaking news in between recordings, all types of things of that nature. You can also join the community on Facebook.com/TheFantasyFootballFanatics, or you can email your questions to the show to TheFantasyFootballFanatics@gmail.com. We've been getting quite a few. A lot of people are in running back conundrums this week, so if you guys have any other questions, well, send them in. We'll be happy to do our best to get to all of them. We can't get to them all, but we do our very best. We answer hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands a week. It all kind of runs together, but we'll get there. And of course, if that's not enough for you guys, make sure you guys head over to patreon.com/thefantasyfootballfanatics, where you can get yourselves a ton of bonus perks every single week, including those bonus episodes every single week. We had an amazing show this week where we covered all these candidates of buy low, sell high. It was a lot of really good stuff, and people have already talked about how they were able to sell high on a couple of guys to buy low on various other ones, so that's a twofer, as we like to say, and they could not be happier. So yeah, if you guys want to get a piece of that information, head over to patreon.com/thefantasyfootballfanatics. Again, it's stuff that we would love to get to here on the main show, but we're limited based on time and availability, and just what we can fit into 2 shows a week. We're hoping to maybe, and this is peeling back the curtain, we're hoping to expand to 3 weeks by at some point next season, but of course that's next year. So if you want that now, again, patreon.com/thefantasyfootballfanatics. But I'm going to move on because I'm starting to sound like a broken record. So with that, I'm going to move into the warm-up question of the day, which was, what was your biggest takeaway from Thursday Night Football? Of course, Bears versus Packers in Lambeau, and quite a few bits of information to get to today. Of course, a couple things to note. If you guys tuned in, or some of you, I'm sure, went to bed early. Some of you were checking your phones and it was past midnight on the East Coast, and you're like, why is it just now getting to the fourth quarter? Well, there were rain delays. There was lightning in the area. The game was delayed for a substantial period of time, so it went pretty late. It didn't end up wrapping up till closer to 1 on the East Coast. So, if you want to stay up late and watch the game, it wasn't exactly a nail-biter, but you got to see the Packers do what they do. And again, I still feel like they're still really finding themselves as a team, and I think they're going to get better as the season goes on. They do that regularly. So they're through the first quarter, but we have all these other teams to get to, which we will now. Some takeaways from the game itself, though, and this is important. Packers running back Ty Montgomery suffered broken ribs in this game. He did play for the next few plays, but he eventually was forced from the game. Now, this is where it gets a little bit frustrating. Rookie running back Jamal Williams, who we were very high on leading up into the season, well, he got the opportunity as of next. When Montgomery went down. And, didn't last for very long because he was forced from the game with a knee injury, so the severity of that is yet unknown. We will update you guys as we know more. So if you've been stashing Jamal Williams, hopefully it's nothing serious and he's able to come in, pick up the workload, because Ty Montgomery's going to miss some time. Bruised ribs are one thing, broken are completely different. So we'll see. So with Montgomery and Williams down, rookie running back Aaron Jones got the workload, and he had a decent performance. He got 13 carries for 49 yards, and he did get a touchdown. So I'm sure that helped absolutely no one. Nobody was starting him. I don't even think he's rostered in most leagues. I would have to check on that. But, I mean, it's yeah, I'm going to go ahead and say that if you started Jones, you are a crazy person. But you reaped some benefits. Let me see. He is currently owned in 0.3% of leagues, and honestly, that's higher than I anticipated. So yeah, something to keep in mind. Could be worth a waiver wire add depending on the severity of Jamal Williams' knee. Of course, we are lucky that since this was a Thursday game, we have an extended period of time to get to hear about and get updates on this injury. So of course, we'll let you know when we know more. Also, Green Bay wide receiver Devontae Adams took a vicious shot to the head. He was rushed to a local hospital for examinations on his head and neck area, being evaluated for a concussion along with various other neck and spinal injuries. Reports that came in during the game itself were that he did have feeling in all of his extremities and he could move everything. So obviously that's very good news for him. This when it's all said and done, it is a game where we're much more concerned, I should say, about his long-term health as a human being. So good news there. And head coach Mike McCarthy said in a press conference after the game that, quote, everything looks positive, end quote, going forward. Again, we'll update you as we know more. In the meantime, expect, wow, I'm off the rails. Expect a massive uptick in targets for Randall Cobb, who looked good and looked healthy. Geronimo Allison, of course, will be the next man up as well. And Martellus Bennett, with even Cobb down, we saw him get an uptick in volume. So I think that he will be, again, a guy who, I'm not sure if he's necessarily someone you're locking in and starting every week, but if you're in a deeper league, 2 tight end league, and for some reason he was dropped, he's probably worth a pickup. And also, after the loss, Chicago Bears head coach John Fox said that he left the door open for a quarterback change going forward. So Mike Glennon, I talked about this. I think I talked about it a little bit on the Tuesday show, but I definitely talked about it at our Patreon show. I was talking about how Mike Glennon, he's not been good. He's been trending in the wrong direction. They have Mitchell Trubisky behind him, who has looked very good through the preseason. And, of course, that's what the fans want to see. So we'll see. Could happen going into Week 5. But who knows? We'll update again as we know more. With that, let's go ahead and move into our top headlines from around the league. We'll start the quarterback position, and this is something you may have heard already talked about and reported, but orthopedic surgeon Dr. David Chow, he said that Indianapolis Colts quarterback Andrew Luck might not be ready till November. Now, you're probably asking, who is this guy? Well, he's not the doctor who performed the procedure on Andrew Luck, so I'll put that out there right now. This is not a definitive statement. He is a actual, of course, orthopedic surgeon. He's a guy that is well respected within the field, and he's been known to make a lot of these predictions and be pretty darn accurate, seeing as he is a orthopedic surgeon. But head coach Chuck Pagano said that Andrew Luck will not practice this week, so that kind of falls into the timetable because, as Dr. Chow said, once you get in, you have to really do a couple weeks of practice. So, I mean, it's possible it works out that way. Now, I will say he's not intimately knowledgeable of the situation, having not done the procedure. It's speculation based on what we are all hearing publicly. Maybe some stuff behind closed doors. So, I mean, possible. And if that's the case, I mean, obviously, peeling back the curtain, we talked a little bit about the situation on the Patreon show. So, I mean, if you're a T.Y. Hilton owner, you're going to probably be thinking about ways to want to move him because, I mean, if Andrew Luck is not back in till November, I mean, you've missed such a huge chunk of your fantasy season, and T.Y. Hilton coming off that big week, I still stand by, and you can listen to the show to get the other guys' opinions because they differed from mine, but I believe that the time is to sell high on him because he will command a good amount. People are going to look at that stat line that he had, a very good performance last week, got a touchdown, got over 150 yards. So, I mean, move him if you can, because Andrew Luck, I think when he's back, he'll be completely healthy. I think he'll be great and good to go because they're babying him. I mean, they're not going to bring him back unless the team is comfortable, because they're doing all of this for the long-term longevity of Andrew Luck as their starting quarterback. They want him for the next decade and beyond. So, I don't think he'll be back unless he's 100%. So, but even then, you have to build your timing back up. You got to get back into game shape. You have to make sure the rapport is still there, and it's way too much of a headache. And by the time he gets back, you're getting into the point you're starting to look at your playoff push. So, I mean, I'm selling high on T.Y. Hilton if I can, because you'll be able to get not just name value, but his full, as probably second-round wide receiver value for him. So also, Minnesota Vikings quarterback Sam Bradford has yet to return to practice, and he has officially been ruled out for Sunday's game versus the Detroit Lions. So another week of Case Keenum. So we'll see how that plays out against division rival Detroit Lions. Let's move to the running back position, where Tennessee Titans running back DeMarco Murray practiced in full for week number 4. Of course, coming back from the hamstring injury, he is expected to play. One of the few players that I'm definitely firing up from the Titans in this game against the Houston Texans. Again, divisional matchup. I like it. Derrick Henry, we're not hearing anything one way or another, but DeMarco Murray, as we talked about, and I've been hearing extensively, and therefore I've been reporting to you guys, he is the lead back there. If he is healthy, he will get the bulk of the touches. He is healthy. So, I mean, you play your studs, fire up DeMarco Murray. He should get you a pretty decent stat line this week, especially if Derrick Henry can't go. Let's go to Miami, where running back Jay Ajayi has not been spotted in practice as of yet. He is still expected to play week 4 against the Saints. Remember, everybody, this is a crazy early game in London. It is, Saints at Dolphins, I think, technically, even though it's a London game. So just make sure that you guys have all your transitions, your transactions, your lineups, everything set and ready to go when you go to bed on Saturday. If you follow us again on Twitter at the FF Fanatics, we will be up early with you guys. We'll be tweeting out injury updates as we get them, so you guys will know. But so, I mean, at the very least, make sure that you set your starters for this game. If you're going to play them, make sure that you have it all worked out, because I know a lot of people like to get up Sunday, do their last-second tinkering. You won't be able to move these guys around because they'll have already started playing. So just a heads up there. Let's go to Los Angeles with the Chargers, where head coach Anthony Lynn said that running back Melvin Gordon was listed as a full participant in Thursday's practice and therefore practiced in full, and also said that he will be playing in week number 4 against the Eagles. So good news there. Again, you start your studs, fire them up. That's exciting. Let's go to Kansas City, where head coach Andy Reid said that he does not plan on scaling back the workload for running back Kareem Hunt. So that is incredibly exciting news if you're a Kareem Hunt owner. Obviously, wearing down is a concern. Not the largest back in the league, but I think that this is a workload he can handle. He's an incredibly young guy. And that if not, I mean, you're still getting monster performance. The running back 1 on the season for a guy that, depending on when you drafted, you might not have even drafted until double-digit rounds, which, if that's the case, kudos to you. Good job. So, good news there if you are a Kareem Hunt owner. Let's go to San Francisco, where head coach Kyle Shanahan said that running back Carlos Hyde will be limited in practice this week due to his hip injury. He is expected to play as of right now, though, based on everything that I'm hearing, so good news there. Let's go to Washington, where head coach Jay Gruden said that he will not give running back Chris Thompson more touches. We talked about this as well in the Patreon show, and again, the guys felt differently than I did on this one, but look, he is a gadget player. Yes, he is the number 3 running back on the season in fantasy football. I get all of that, and that is awesome. I love it, and if you were smart enough, or bold enough, I should say, to pick him up and play him, awesome news for you. And he was my waiver wire pickup of the week, and I still stand by that. I still think he's an amazing flex option, but his volume, his workload is so low. And the reason is because he's a smaller guy. He has a long track record of being injured throughout college, and that's what they're trying to avoid here. And everybody would tell you that they're using him correctly. I mean, his productivity and obviously, therefore, his fantasy points have been monstrous through 3 weeks. So they don't want to give him much more than he's getting now because they're afraid he's going to break down. So again, this was a guy who I made a big case against the other two of a sell high candidate because this pace is unsustainable. Could he still be very productive through the season? Easily. But on volume like this, odds are higher than not that he will eventually start getting stuffed, shut down, especially as they get more tape on him. I don't like it. I would just rather sell high while you can because you can get a probably fantasy running back one's return on him because people and most fantasy websites, especially in standard scoring leagues, they're not going to talk to you about his volume share. They're just going to see the stats at the end of the week, his yardage and his touchdowns. They're going to see all this crazy productivity coming from him, and I think they will trade handsomely to get Chris Thompson, and so capitalize on it. A guy who there's a good chance, a really good chance that you picked up off waivers this week, and you'll be able to get a return for a fantasy running back one, even though anyone in the know is pretty much on the same page as me saying that, odds are he doesn't keep that production up. So, I mean, it's just an awesome opportunity for you guys. And on top of this, running back Rob Kelly did return to practice on Thursday dealing with his bruised ribs. It looks like he is a strong possibility of playing this week. So, I mean, there you go. Volume not going to be in his favor. So, let's see. Moving on from there, we'll move to Arizona, where Cardinals running back Chris Johnson will remain the starting running back for week number 4, per head coach Bruce Arians. So, look, Chris Johnson did not look great on Monday night's game against the Cowboys, and so they tried rotating him out. They tried to see who had the hot hand. Andre Ellington seemed to be that guy. Curran Williams didn't get it going either. Andre Ellington showed a little bit of spark, so they tried to use him. But they don't want to give Andre Ellington the workload. That's why they brought Chris Johnson back in, because Andre Ellington, incredibly long history. I mean, not incredibly long. He hasn't been in the league for incredibly long. But throughout his entire career, he has shown that he cannot stay healthy. That is his concern. That's what they're trying to save. They're trying to keep him in because they're using him as a kind of a Swiss Army knife gadget-type player all over the field. They're bouncing him out wide as a wide receiver. They're running the ball with him. They don't want to get him hurt. Very talented guy, but very brittle. So Chris Johnson, look, I think that he's still kind of getting into game shape. I think that he has better matches on the horizon. Yes, he's an older back at this point in his career, but I still think that he's got what it takes to be a workhorse. I don't think we're going to see CJ 2K anymore. I think that point of his career is behind him, unless he can get into open space and really kick it into the next gear repeatedly. But I think that this is to be expected, and I think that as long as Chris Johnson doesn't get hurt or doesn't start fumbling all over the place or his production dips considerably from where it is now, I think that he will remain the starter for at least the foreseeable future. So if you are a Chris Johnson owner, I would fire him up with some confidence. I mean, they're playing the 49ers in Arizona. I would imagine he gets going in this game. We just saw the 49ers give up a monster amount of points to the Rams, so this could be a get-right week for that entire Cardinals offense and Chris Johnson as well. So if you have him, I'm starting him with confidence this week. Let's move to New York with the Jets, where running back Matt Forte is dealing with turf toe. Originally, they thought it might be broken. Turns out, came back x-rays and MRIs that it's just turf toe. But Matt Forte in recent interviews said he felt like he had broken it. Excruciating pain. If anyone's ever dealt with turf toe out there, it sucks. I went through a period where I had turf toe on both of my big toes, and yeah, I just never wanted to walk anywhere. It is very, very painful, and there's nothing you can really do to relieve the pain. In the meantime, he is expected to miss potentially a couple of weeks, and they are expected to, and they mean the Jets, to lean heavily, and that's a quote, on Bilal Powell in the meantime, per ESPN's Rich Cimini, or Camini, rather. I can't talk. With that, let's move on to our wide receiver position, where Atlanta Falcons wide receiver Julio Jones has been limited in practice dealing with a back injury. Talked about this all offseason, all preseason. If you are going to roster Julio Jones, if you are going to draft him, he is going to be banged up. He is hurt all year, every year. He plays through injuries. So, expect this to be the norm. He's going to be banged up. It's going to affect your decision-making. But, I mean, hey, if he plays, he plays for you. That's basically the way it works. I've rostered him in years past, and even when he's banged up in tough matchups, you still start him because, as we saw last year, in what seemed like a not great matchup, 300 yards and a touchdown is a possibility for Julio Jones, a freak athlete and the prototypical wide receiver in the league. So, it's academic at this point. Seattle Seahawks head coach Pete Carroll said that wide receiver Doug Baldwin is planning to play on Sunday night, dealing with his groin injury, but he has still not practiced as of this point on Thursday, so a slight concern. But, again, they think he will play. We will update you guys as we know more. Let's go to Los Angeles with the Rams, where wide receiver Sammy Watkins was upgraded to a full participant in practice on Thursday. So he was dealing with that concussion that he suffered on Thursday Night Football last week. So good news there, and, got to ride that hot hand. So that's exciting news if you are Sammy Watkins owner and believer and truther, as some members of this show would be, and we'll get to that a little bit later on. Houston wide receiver DeAndre Hopkins remained limited at practice on Thursday, dealing with a knee injury. Banged up, but he is expected to play. This is not expected to be anything that holds him out. Again, game against the Titans. Speaking of the Titans, wide receiver Corey Davis has been ruled out for week number 4, dealing with that hamstring injury. So that's, you probably weren't starting him anyway, but this is obviously good news if you are a Rashard Matthews owner who has looked very good 2 of the last 3 weeks. More volume. That's exciting. Let's go to Oakland, where wide receiver Michael Crabtree has remained limited in practice, and as of Thursday, dealing with a chest injury. Hopefully he gets right. They've got a decent matchup this week. Let's go to Pittsburgh, where Steelers wide receiver Martellus Bennett, who remains sidelined on Thursday dealing with an illness. I'm sure that he will be fine whenever these guys get sick, as long as they're not on their deathbed. They usually pump them full of fluids and put them out on the field. So maybe not someone that I'm rushing to start, depending on the severity of his illness. But, I mean, it's also not a good matchup. I mean, he's playing the Ravens. I know the Ravens gave up a ton of points this past week, but Steelers-Ravens, that's one of the premier rivalries in the league, I would say, and even NFL.com, if you look at the schedule, says the NFL's most heated rivalry. And Jason and CJ like to give me crap for this because, I'm a big Ravens fan, and I believe that this is the best rivalry, and I like to get angry when it's not a primetime game, and it's a 1 o'clock game, so we talk about that a lot on the in between recordings on our private chat channels. So, it's just not a good matchup. I wouldn't play them. Just putting that out there. I think the Ravens are going to have something to prove. They are at home. They got embarrassed on the road, and I think a lot of that had to do with their ability to travel. I think that they're going to be right. I think they're going to be ready. I think they're going to be angry. Look, even the rookies not getting time on both teams, they step it up for this game. This is a hard-hitting game, usually very low scoring. So, yeah, Martavis Bryant, upside. The ceiling is always there, but I'm worried about his floor this week, especially if he's ill. So take that into account with your decision-making. Let's go to Carolina, where wide receiver Kelvin Benjamin has not practiced yet this week. Of course, dealing with that scary-looking knee injury, that tackle from behind. We talked about that on Tuesday's show. Now, head coach Ron Rivera has said that barring a setback, he is expected to play Sunday versus the New England Patriots. So, obviously, that's very good news there. If you are starting Cam Newton, I mean, you have to have this be the contingency. We talk about this on the Patreon show. I think we talked about it on Tuesday as well. I'm not very high on Cam Newton going forward. They're playing the Patriots, which is a juicy matchup, but they are in Foxborough, and I think that, obviously the stats show that it's a juicy matchup, but a lot of that I think is still really stemming from week 1, though Deshaun Watson looked good last week, so it's tough to say. I still think that Kelvin Benjamin is the deciding factor if you're going to start Cam Newton, but again, if he plays, he's going to be probably a little bit banged up. That knee is tweaked, so things to take into account for sure. Hopefully you're able to sell high on these guys if you're talking to me. I've given that advice to a lot of people who have tweeted at me. Again, at the FF Fanatics for the show, or you can reach me at G Palmer FFF. I almost blanked on my own Twitter handle there. So yeah, let's move on to to Houston. Why did I mistype that? To Houston, where wide receiver Will Fuller is practicing in full for week number 4. Of course, coming back from that broken collarbone in the preseason. Now he is going to make his season debut. Should have talked about this when we were talking about DeAndre Hopkins. That's bad pacing on my part. But yeah, exciting. The speedy wide receiver coming back. I think this will obviously help open up run lanes for Lamar Miller and Deonta Foreman. It'll help pull coverage away from DeAndre Hopkins. This is exciting news all around. Or if you picked up my waiver wire pickup of the week, Ryan Griffin, I think that'll help him with the short to intermediate stuff as well. So sneaky tight end play. I like that a lot. With that, let's move on to the tight end position with some headlines, and let's start in Tennessee. We keep going back to this game with Titans running. Good Lord. Tennessee Titans tight end, kind of a tongue twister. Delanie Walker is day-to-day dealing with a hamstring injury. He has returned to practice as of Thursday. He is expected to play as of right now. Again, we will update you guys when we have the official ins and outs and injury updates going into Sunday's game. Also, in Washington, I almost said Tennessee Titans. Washington Redskins tight end Jordan Reed, he practiced on Thursday dealing with both chest, shoulder, and toe injuries. His status is still up in the air for week number 4. We will update you guys as we know more. Of course, if he plays, that completely sinks the value of Vernon Davis. So again, be smart. If you picked up Vernon Davis, this is important and something to keep an eye on for sure. So with that, let's move on to our topic of the day, which is our week number 4 preview. These are our starts and sits for week 4. Let me check the time. Oh, we're doing perfectly fine, which is expected because I'm talking to myself and I could go a lot more in depth, but I don't want to ramble on. I know guys like to give me a lot of crap for doing that from time to time, so we'll just power through. So we'll start with our quarterback starts of the week, and mine is one Trevor Siemian. Now, I know that Trevor Siemian looked really, really good coming off of week 2, and if you started him in week 3, you were a little bit disappointed. I preached caution going into this week, and for the reason simply that they were going on the road to Buffalo. Now, Buffalo is not an outstanding team or defense this year, but it's still stingy, and Trevor Siemian is much better when they play at home, and this game is back in Denver. Oakland is coming into Denver, which, we saw the Redskins carve up this Raiders defense, and I think that Siemian has a very good shot to do that. So if you are in deeper leagues, if you're streaming quarterbacks, or if you're in a 2-quarterback league, I fire up Trevor Siemian with confidence this week. I like it a lot. CJ's start of the week is Tyrod Taylor. Buffalo is in Atlanta, so something to keep in mind here. I agree that I think this is obviously a good opportunity, but if there's one thing the Falcons do well, it is pass rush. So I'm worried about Tyrod Taylor. If he can scramble and he can get around that pass rush, he has a chance to get you a lot of production this week with his legs. So, I think that Tyrod Taylor, like Trevor Siemian, is a sneaky start. He's a guy that I think a lot of people are going to want to bench, and if you do, I understand it, but as CJ has him as the start of the week, I think that the ceiling is there to have a decent productive game, especially in what could be a very high-scoring game. The Falcons at home, obviously, are very, very good, and one of the better offenses in the league, so Tyrod Taylor is going to have to sling the rock and make some plays, and as long as he gets that job done, he'll get you some production. So I like Tyrod Taylor as well this week. And then Jason's guy. Jason is this is a guy who I wanted to place in my starts, and in an article that I put up, I do like the opportunity, but I couldn't possibly put him as my start of the week after last week's abysmal performance. Jay Cutler. Now, of course, the Dolphins are technically a home team this week, but they are on the road like last week. This time not a divisional rival, but they are playing in London, so I take that as kind of a wash. Normally these London games, if one team shows up and the other doesn't, like we pretty much saw last week with the Ravens versus Jags, it can be a very high-scoring affair. So I definitely like Jay Cutler. I like the weapons there, but I preach caution because I think that all of those players in Miami, and the Saints as well, the Saints don't travel well usually either, I think that they all have much lower floors than you would normally give them, but incredibly high ceilings. Because obviously the Saints are a very bad defense. The Dolphins have not been stingy to this point. So I think this could potentially, it's going to go one of two ways. It's either going to be a very close game, possibly low scoring, because again, it's in London early. It throws everybody's clock off because they're not used to practicing, much less playing that early. I mean, maybe practicing, but not to the extent of game speed. Or it could be a complete shootout, blowout. I mean, this could be high scoring. So, Jay Cutler, if it's going to be the latter, if it's going to be a high scoring game that goes over Vegas odds, of course you want a piece of that game. So, I think that Jay Cutler, look, you're probably starting Drew Brees even though it's on the road, so that's an obvious start. So, I like that Jason's throwing out Jay Cutler right here. This could be a very sneaky start for him. I like that one a lot. So, again, remember, if you are starting any Dolphins or Saints, set them before you go to bed on Saturday because this game is an early one. Let's move to the running back position where I am starting running back Joe Mixon. Now, Joe Mixon, again, an off-season favorite of the show and most analysts around the league. You've had to stash him. I have rostered Joe Mixon in well over half of my leagues, and I have not yet started him in any one of those leagues. He was a part of a three-headed committee. It was just not a good situation. He played a number of tougher defenses, but now with Bill Lazor now calling the offense and seeing how his workload went up drastically last week, Giovanni Bernard is banged up. He might not play. Jeremy Hill, rather. Good Lord. Looking ahead there. Jeremy Hill, he doesn't bring anything to the table, really. Joe Mixon doesn't. I think he's more of a guy to spell him than a change of pace back. I just really like Joe Mixon's opportunity this week. Again, the Bengals are on the road, but they're playing the Cleveland Browns, which is not a very good defense. It is divisional, so take that into account, but I think this is the week. I think week 4, I've been stashing him. I would like to give it a little bit more time to solidify, but the matchup's good. The volume is there. I think that you can start Joe Mixon and expect running back 2 production this week. And, of course, there's always the ceiling that he could do much better than that. A very talented player. So I am firing up Joe Mixon this week. I am finally bringing him up off the bench and starting him if I don't have better options, or at least plugging him into my flex spot. I like Joe Mixon a lot this week. CJ's guy, I kind of spoiled it there, Jay Ajayi. Again, I think these guys are not necessarily worried about the fact that this is a London game as much as I am, but again, it could go either way. Jay Ajayi is going up against the Saints defense, which again is very bad, so I like the opportunity. I know normally I give you guys a lot of stats and like fantasy points against, and it's easier to do that when there's co-hosts, but also I don't put a ton of stock into that until we get about a quarter of the way into the season. So going into next week, we'll have a much better look because these guys will have had a big enough sample size playing divisional and non-divisional opponents so we actually get a decent look at what they're going to be. I don't think we really know who they are until we get about halfway through the year, but we start being able to see the stats and the trends. But, I mean, the Saints, they have not been a good defense. You can tell just by looking at them. Still the case this year. So Jay Ajayi, he is expected to play. He should be good. As we mentioned before, he's a little bit banged up dealing with, what was it? I forgot. I'm blanking on it. But anyway, I don't want to linger. Dealing with a slight injury, but he is expected to play. I'm not worried about Jay Ajayi at all. Start him up with confidence. And then Jason's guy, and I could see this, Leonard Fournette. Now, the Jets, they just shut down the Dolphins at home. I mean, the Jets won a game. Their scam for Sam plans are essentially ruined right now. I think there's 5 teams still that don't have a win, so now they've got to lose some games and get those guys some wins. But, in the reality in the NFL, they're going to play. They're going to compete. Leonard Fournette, look, matchup on paper is good. The Jets, I think if there's one thing that they can do, it's probably stop the run, but I don't think they're going to be able to shut down Leonard Fournette. I think if he can get rolling, and if the Jags can get out to any sort of start like they did in London against the Ravens last week, I mean, the Jets defense is no Ravens defense. So, I mean, it's anything's possible. And then Leonard Fournette can really get running, and they start killing clock with him and start just running the ball down the Jets' throats. I like it a lot. I mean, obviously, the ceiling is high. You know, the top running back in this year's draft. He's been decent through 3 weeks. I like the opportunity. Deeper pick for Jason. So I do like this start. I would start him with confidence. I'm not deterred by the fact he's playing the Jets. Let's be real. So I'm just putting that little disclaimer out there. They look good against the Dolphins, but again, that's a Dolphins team that hadn't, it was their second game of the season, the third for the Jets, and divisional. So you throw all that stuff out the window. Jags, Jets, not divisional at all. So yeah, I could get behind that as well. Let's move on to the wide receiver position where I am starting Golden Tate. Detroit Lions, again, they're traveling on the road. They're in Minnesota. And, a lot of people, I think, would be concerned about this because obviously Xavier Rhodes is there and he has been really, really, really good. He is one of the top corners in the league. But here's the thing. He doesn't travel into the slot. He plays the outside receiver. I think he's going to be locking down Marvin Jones or Kenny Golladay, depending on the situation that they're in. Golden Tate, he operates, I think it was somewhere between 75-80% out of the slot. So I think Golden Tate will be running free. The rest of the defensive backs there are obviously, there's some incredibly talented safeties, but I mean, as long as he's staying away from Rhodes, he's going to have some room to really, really run and operate. And I think Golden Tate, especially in PPR leagues, is going to still put up a monster stat line. So, does he get multiple scores this week like he arguably could have and should have gotten last week? Who knows? But I think that he is a sneaky start, one that a lot of people are going to be probably thinking to sit, and I say don't do it. You can start him with confidence this week. CJ's guy, a guy we kind of mentioned before that I liked in having an opportunity this week, especially with Corey Davis still being down, is Rashard Matthews, Tennessee Titans. They are on the road at Houston, so, I mean, I like that. Guys, again, the Texans, they have been good, not great. They've given up a decent amount of points. I mean, obviously, we saw what happened last week in Foxborough against the Patriots. I don't think that the Titans' offense is the Patriots' offense. Obviously, that's not the case. But the Titans, they're getting better. This is divisional, so I will preach caution there. But Rashard Matthews, I think he's the best receiver on that team right now. Eric Decker has not looked like what we thought he was going to be, like he was going into the 2016 season. He looked great in 2015. Corey Davis is down. Rashard Matthews is going to get a lot of volume. I just like his opportunity to score this week. So I agree with CJ. This is a decent start, and I would start him with confidence this week. Obviously, the floor is lower being divisional and a tough matchup, but if there's any receiver that's going to thrive this week in Houston, I think it's going to be Rashard Matthews, at least coming from the Titans side. And then Jason's guy, staying in the flames, Sammy Watkins. I mean, look, he just scored 2 touchdowns and got a bunch of yards. It was against the 49ers, but that was divisional, but that was a boat race. The Cowboys, I think, and I've talked about this extensively, I think their defense is overrated. I think their players are doing a phenomenal job. I think it's mostly the pass rush that's doing a lot for this defense and not giving, we saw Carson Palmer was not given any time. I think that if they are able to slow down that pass rush, Jared Goff, I mean, he's got a pretty decent matchup. They're in Dallas, so that's concerning, but Sammy Watkins, we know the talent. We talk about this for years. He is one of the top talents at the wide receiver position in the league. Just can't stay healthy. Well, he's healthy going into this game. He's obviously building a good rapport with Jared Goff, who I think honestly is developing into the best quarterback that he's played with to this point in his career. So I agree with Jason. This is a pick that I like a lot. Sammy Watkins could give you a pretty decent ceiling. Obviously, he's a low floor player because he's not necessarily the highest volume play, but I like Sammy Watkins a lot as well. Let's move on to the tight end position where I am starting Charles Clay. Now, with what we talked about before with Tyrod Taylor, CJ's start, I mean, the main beneficiary, I think, is Charles Clay. The Falcons have been very bad against the tight end. If there's one thing that they're not good at, which they don't have the best defense in the league, but they're not great against tight ends. And I think Charles Clay will continue to be one of, if not the top pass-catching target on that offense. Obviously, you're going to get a lot of targets to LaShawn McCoy. Jordan Matthews is going to get a decent amount of volume mixed in there as well, but Charles Clay from the tight end position, they use him as basically another one of their starting wide receivers. I like his opportunity. I mean, we saw last week he put up a really good stat line, and I think he can keep that going. This has been one of my sleeper tight end picks all offseason, I was preaching this guy for a long time. I was the highest on him in our consensus rankings, and he's starting to shine. What I saw seems to be happening. So I'm excited about Charles Clay. I'm sticking with him in deeper leagues. Definitely the deepest choice out of the three of ours. If you're looking for a streaming candidate, he was good last week. I think he keeps it going. CJ's guy is a little bit more obvious of a start. I think everybody's starting this guy anyway, but he has had a really rough start of the season, so maybe not. And that is Kyle Rudolph versus the Detroit Lions. So Kyle Rudolph is at home. We already know Sam Bradford's not playing, so I don't know if CJ took that into account or not, but Case Keenum, he looked serviceable last week. Obviously, he put up a good stat line, and Kyle Rudolph has had a decent track record against the Lions, and this could be a get-right game for him. That's obviously what CJ's thinking, and you can't keep a guy like Kyle Rudolph down for this long. He's going to eventually get it going, and this could be that week. And again, if you own Kyle Rudolph, you're probably starting him anyway, but CJ's starting him with confidence, so there you go. And Jason's guy is Jared Cook. Now, the Raiders are, again, in Denver, and the Broncos, they do a couple things incredibly well. Obviously, they have some of the better corners in the league. Aqib Talib, Chris Harris. They have been very good against the run this year, which has been a big knock on them in years past. But there's one thing that has been a constant for them, and we saw this again last week. Charles Clay had a very good week against the Broncos. They are bad against the tight ends. So I think that Jared Cook has an opportunity here. I don't know if there's a large enough target share to start him with confidence. I think this might be a depth play. I wish Jason was here to chime in, but I like the ceiling. The floor could be a little bit low, but the opportunity and the matchup is there. So if you are desperate for a tight end start, Jared Cook could easily be that guy for you. So, start him. Go for it. Why not? What have you got to lose? All the big-name tight ends have been a big letdown through this point of the season, so go for it. He's a bigger name, but he's no Kyle Rudolph. He's no Jimmy Graham. He's no Rob Gronkowski. Well, Gronk has not been a disappointment. He's the only tight end that hasn't been. So with that, let's move into our sits of the week. So these guys we'll get through a little bit quicker because you probably can tell just by the matchups why this is not good. So I am sitting Cam Newton for all reasons I've been preaching for, I feel like, years now, but it's been weeks. Cam Newton does not look like himself. He is clearly not right from that shoulder injury. He has yet to have a good performance. He's had one okay stat line, and that's because of a busted coverage that a play broke open on a screen pass he took to the house. I've talked about this a couple times. And Cam Newton is down his go-to safety blanket receiver with tight end Greg Olsen. Kelvin Benjamin is expected to play, but if he plays, is he 100%? Decent matchup against the Patriots, but they are going into Foxborough again. I think the Patriots defense is slowly finding themselves. They've got good corners there. I don't like Cam Newton. I don't think that he is an NFL fantasy quarterback if he cannot run the ball. And they don't want him to, and they're really worried about protecting that shoulder. So I've talked about this, that he is a guy that I think that you can honestly drop, but you probably won't because of name value alone. I talked about this a lot on the Patreon show. I'm selling Cam Newton for anything I can get for him. Could he turn it around? Incredibly easily. I don't know if I can say incredibly easy, but he could very easily turn it around. He had that MVP year, which I think, looking back on his career in another 10, 20 years, we'll say was the outlier. I think that was just a freak, amazing year for him. I don't know if we ever see that again. Sorry, Panthers fans out there. It's the head coach, it's the offense, it's the scheme, it's his skill set, it's his weapons. It's just a blend of things that none of it is overly contributing, and I don't like his situation going into week number 4. So I am sitting Cam Newton, and I'm not starting him until I see something, which I don't know if we're going to see something until Greg Olsen gets back, and even then, who knows? Could he have a dump-off pass to Christian McCaffrey that gets taken to the house on any given week? Oh, yeah, absolutely, and that pads the stats. But Cam Newton himself as a quarterback has not looked great, so I'm sitting him until I see something that persuades me to think otherwise, especially in this matchup, which on paper is good, but I think that most of that is reflecting back to week 1. So, yeah, I'm not excited about it. CJ is sitting Derek Carr. So So that's bold. I guess CJ's taking the same approach here. Divisional matchup on the road in Denver. So obviously that's less than desirable. And Derek Carr looked poor this past week in Washington. I think he turns it around, honestly, but it is a definite low ceiling game against the Broncos, so I completely understand where CJ is coming from, and I even second it. So, Derek Carr, he's got the weapons, he's got the opportunity, but man, honestly, this is something we didn't talk about on this, so this is peeling back the curtain if you guys have made it to this part of the show, which I assume you have, because this is why you're here. And I'm sure the guys would feel differently here, but I'm telling you, they're not here. So I'm going to give you what I, the most analytical member of the show, would do. I am selling the crap out of Derek Carr right now. His schedule is horrible. I don't know what the power rankings are right now for strength of schedule based on what we know now through the season, but I think that the Raiders must have one of, if not the worst schedules in the league. Unbelievably tough defenses they play throughout the vast majority of the season. Derek Carr on name value and previous production, you're going to be able to get something for him, I think, and I would rather stream than start him week to week. Could he easily prove me wrong on any given week? Yes. But I think that he's going to be very hot and cold week to week. And if he struggled against the Redskins, which I think was an anomaly, honestly, but I mean, he's got so many of these tough defenses. You know, the Broncos twice, the Chiefs twice, and various other really good defenses. Baltimore comes into town, just to name a few. I don't like Derek Carr. I'm sure that there are other guys that you can get around his value that have much more favorable matchups throughout the season. So, obviously don't sell him for nothing, but if you can get a decent amount for Derek Carr, I do it because it's rough. I mean, I feel the same way about Amari Cooper. I feel the same way, and we were talking about him as a potential buy low because he's done nothing, but it's scary. I feel that way about Marshawn Lynch. I feel that way about a lot of the Raiders' offensive players. Will they have big weeks? Yeah, obviously. It's a very high-powered, talented offense, but it's tough. I could be proven wrong easily, but it's a tough matchup, so I don't like it week to week. I'm definitely I'm playing the matchups with those guys more than I thought I would going into the year. Derek Carr is CJ's sit this week, and I get it. And rambled a little bit there, sorry about that. And then Jason's sit of the week is Matthew Stafford. On the road in Minnesota, I mean, look, Stafford, he's looked pretty good through the last couple weeks, through the season, really. But this is a tougher matchup in Minnesota. And, the Vikings, of course, a divisional foe who know him very well. They know his tendencies. I agree. Stafford could be a guy who could let you down this week. So if you have a better option, I would look at that option, depending on what it is. Or in Jason's case, Jay Cutler. That could be a good streaming option. So, let's move to the running backs, where my set of the week, I guess, there you go, ties in with what we were just talking about here. Marshawn Lynch. Now, as we already mentioned, the Raiders are going on the road. They are going into Denver, and that would not be a scary thing last year. But the Broncos have been good against the run through this point of the year. So I'm not firing up Marshawn Lynch. Yes, he's getting the workload. We talked about this a lot in the Patreon and Tuesday show. But no. Until they commit more to the run, because he led the backfield in touches with single-digit carries last week. So, I mean, that's just not a big workload. I don't know if they're a pro team, so I'm sure they know how to use him, but I don't feel like they're using him properly. He should be in anytime they're in the red zone. That was the upside that we saw coming into the year, and all the analysts around the industry thought, because that's his forte. And we see all these drives, late in games, red zone stances, whatever the case may be, where he's not in. So until I see them using him right, I'm concerned about Marshawn Lynch going forward. So we talked about various options of what we want to do with him. If you want to hear more, again, I don't mean to keep plugging the Patreon, but it was just a really good show where we really deep dived into a lot of these players. So again, that's patreon.com/thefantasyfootballfanatics. We'd love to give you guys that content for free. Maybe I'll try and push it out way down the line, but it's one of those things. We got to keep the lights on them. I'm sorry, guys. I'm really sorry. Just support the show and get all this good information. I promise you will not be disappointed. CJ sit of the week is Lamar Miller. Now, again, really not a great matchup. Lamar Miller has been losing touches to Deonta Foreman. I talk about this a lot. I still think that he is by far and away the lead runner there, but I think this is becoming much more of an even committee with every passing week, and a tougher matchup against the Titans. So, yeah, I could see this Lamar Miller until some form of separation happens between them, or Deontay Foreman goes down, and Lamar Miller starts to look like his former self when he was with the Dolphins. It's God, that sucks, because you probably spent a second, maybe early third-round pick on Lamar Miller. So, yeah. It's not good. I agree. So let's see. Jason's sit of the week is Amir Abdullah. Now, Amir Abdullah, he said versus Detroit. No, he plays for Detroit, Jason. Silly Jason. Playing against the Vikings. The Vikings have a very, very good defensive line. It's going to be hard for him to get going, and that Detroit Lions running game has not exactly been efficient. And a lot of that you could I don't know if you could contribute to the passing game. This is a team that just doesn't seem to have a good running scheme. I don't know if it's the offensive line. I don't know if it's been the matchups. I don't know what it is. I'm going to have to break it down more. But, yeah, Amir Abdullah, look, he's the lead back there. If you need a volume play, I mean, I would say go ahead and start him, but I think his ceiling is low. He isn't the entire team has not run the ball well to this point, and the Vikings, I think, are their toughest run defense that they played against. So I like Jason's thought here to sit Amir Abdullah. My wide receiver sit of the week is a guy I talked about earlier on, a guy I'm trying to sell, T.Y. Hilton. Andrew Luck, we don't know when he's going to be back. Jacoby Brissett has looked decent, a lot better than Scott Tolzien has through this point of the week. He looks actually like a competent NFL cornerback, or quarterback. Let me pronunciate there. But the Colts, they're not at home this week like they were against the Browns, where he had a good performance. They're going from playing the Browns at home to traveling on the road into Seattle, where they're playing the Seahawks. There's no way I'm starting T.Y. Hilton. Literally no way. So, yeah, I'm benching him. I'm trying to sell him, but, that's another side conversation right there. Sorry, T.Y. Hilton. It's just not, I'm not excited about the opportunity. You're going to be having a hard time getting going this week. CJ sit of the week, Terrell Pryor, a guy that I talked about quite a bit previously. I, again, talked about this on the Patreon show. I'm selling Terrell Pryor. He has not looked good. We see this all the time. We magically imagine this player who was very good last year. Oh, he's switching teams, going to a better offense with a better quarterback and a better system. He's going to thrive there, right? And that's what the vast majority of the industry believed. He had a great offseason, a good training camp, a good preseason, and he has been god-awful through 3 weeks of the regular season. Could he turn it around? Absolutely. But it's scary to start him week in and week out, seeing what he has done. And this week, he's on the road in Kansas City. I don't like the matchup, so I agree with CJ. Terrell Pryor is a guy that I'm sitting until I see more. And then Jason's sit of the week, Michael Crabtree. Again, he's on the road in Denver. He's a little bit banged up right now. All the things we said before about the Broncos. Well, yeah, the Broncos is true. They're a good defense. And the Raiders is true, where they have tough matchups. Michael Crabtree is still by far and away the one wide receiver, if he's healthy, that I'm starting any given week in Oakland. But, depending on the injury and the matchups, which we have a bad one this week, I agree. I would be looking elsewhere. It's potentially a dangerous situation. Let's move on to the tight end sits of the week, where I am sitting Kobe Fleener. Now, guys, I have been a Kobe Fleener truther. If you guys have been with the show for any period of time, I'm by far the highest on him out of this entire show. But here's the thing. Willie Snead, I meant to talk about that earlier on, so if you made it this far, kudos to you. Willie Snead is back. Now, this is going to be great for the Saints offense. I love Willie Snead being back. Now, he's got to work in. He's got to make sure he's in game shape. But he's going to draw targets away from Kobe Fleener, who I think was picking up a decent amount of volume with Willie Snead being down. So I think that the Saints on the road, and not just on the road, but overseas, with now another weapon back in the offense, I think Kobe Fleener is still going to have good weeks. And this is a good matchup. But, I like him better with good matchups at home in New Orleans than I do on the road with new pieces coming in. It's it's a wait-and-see approach for me. Could you start Coby Fleener and he give you a good week? Yeah, absolutely. If you don't have any other options, I say go for it. But if you do have other options, I am sitting Coby Fleener until I see more. I think that the chances are higher that he gives you a goose egg than he does a high stat line this week. CJ sit of the week is Jordan Reed. Again, he started practicing, so I don't like this either. Tough matchup against the Chiefs, and he's incredibly banged up. I think if he plays, he's going to be playing a limited role. So, yeah, I know a lot of shows out there, analysts, and even us, we say, look, Jordan Reed, he's one of the most talented tight ends in the league. He is simply a high-end wide receiver playing the tight end position, but he's banged up. He's always hurt. It's a tough matchup on the road. I don't like it. CJ doesn't either. Don't start Jordan Reed this week. Please don't. And Jason's sit of the week is Zach Ertz. Zach Ertz has looked really, really good through 3 weeks. It looks like he's trying to blow up that stigma of being Mr. December. He's one of the few high-end, bigger-name tight ends that we were high on coming into the season that's actually been performing near our expectations. But the Eagles are playing against the Chargers, and they are on the road in Los Angeles, if memory serves correctly. Yes, they are. So, it concerns me. The Chargers have an underrated defense, and I think that they are pretty good against the tight ends as well. So I see where Jason is coming from. If you have better options, I'm sitting Zach Ertz. Could he go out there and give you a good week? I think that it's doable. I think it's possible, in fact. But as a whole, it's just I could get it. There's a lot of weapons, a lot of mouths to feed there. So let's see. The Chargers. Yeah, the Chargers are giving up the 6th least points to the tight end position in fantasy. Again, this is based on 3 weeks of fantasy value, and that's fantasy points. So I take that with a grain of salt this early in the season, but it's something to take into account. So yeah, Zach Ertz, it's a tough matchup. Do what you can. That is going to do it for us today. Please make sure you guys tune in on Tuesday when the guys will be back. You won't have to hear me rambling and talking to myself, though. I mean, I like to think I'm a good source of information. Hopefully you guys are enjoying the show. But, it's always more interesting when you have multiple views, multiple takes, and a little bit of a debate in there. So the guys will be back on Tuesday when we will be talking about our studs and duds from week number 4. And, of course, all of our top waiver wire pickups for week number 5. We already have a very interesting development from Thursday night's game moving forward. And I'm sure that there will probably be some other ones. So, yeah, if you guys want to know who to pick up, see you on Tuesday. As always, make sure, and I know I kind of harped on this a lot this week. I'm sorry, I don't mean to keep plugging it. But if you guys want to support the show, help us keep doing what we are doing, keep coming to you guys for free every single week, giving you this, hopefully, what we think is great advice to bring home some of these fantasy titles at the end of the year. Head over to patreon.com/thefantasyfootballfanatics, and you'll get a lot of bonus perks, the bonus episodes, priority question answering, at some tiers guaranteed question answering. We now have a new tier that if you sign up there, you get to even do like a monthly Skype call, Google Hangout with us, so you can really get to know us, and we'll answer all your fantasy questions. So that's little side plug there. And yeah, lots of other cool perks as well, including discounts on show gear. We're supposed to have a new run of t-shirts soon, so check in there. They'll obviously have first crack at it. Remember, you can find our rankings and articles as they come out on the website, thefantasyfootballfanatics.com, and just subscribe to the show. We're here every single Tuesday and Friday. We're going to do our best, guys. We want to bring you these titles, and I talk about this all the time. If you are 1-2, 0-3 right now, don't freak out. Subscribe to the show. Stick with us. We're going to do our best. Because, we had plenty of people write in from last year, 2016, where they said, I started off 0-4, 0-5. We even had a guy saying he was 0-7, which I don't know how that's possible, 0-7, that said, I started off horribly, and I was able to turn my season around, got into the playoffs, and once you get into the playoffs, anything is possible. A good number of them brought home titles. That's why we do what we do. We're trying to bring you guys home these fantasy titles. We love what we do. And, man, do we have some of the best listeners out there. We love you guys. Our listener league is incredibly competitive, so we're loving that. And, man, I'm still suffering from that auction draft. I didn't take it seriously. That if you guys are on Patreon or in the league, you guys know exactly what I'm talking about. You jerks. Anyway, let's get out of here. I'm starting to ramble. Follow the show on Twitter at the FF Fanatics. Get breaking news, or you can follow me individually. I am at GPalmerFFF. All right, so we're out of here. Everyone, take care. Have a great weekend of football. Enjoy the games. We will see you on Tuesday. Best of luck to all of your teams. Take care, guys. Bye.